That is the most expensive sentence you can say. I don't care. I just want to be done. That is the critical point in every divorce, because when you make these agreements, you're trying to stop short-term pain with long-term commitments.
Welcome to the Crazy Ex-Wives Club, a podcast dedicated to helping women navigate the emotional journey that is divorce. I'm your host, Erica, and if you're trying to figure out life after the big D, welcome to the club. Whether you're contemplating divorce or dealing with the aftermath or any of the many phases in between, the club has got you covered. Each week, you'll hear stories from women who have been in your shoes. This isn't about spilling tea on divorce details. This is about giving you the tools to take control of your own healing journey. Listen in weekly for advice, tips, and tools to help you move through each stage of the process.
What if you could design a divorce process that took less time, saved you money, caused less emotional turmoil, and got you to the same place of being ready to start your next chapter? Today's guest is going to help us avoid costly financial mistakes, understand how to build our own divorce team, and the things we don't even know we're missing. Welcome back to another episode of the Crazy Ex-Wives Club. I'm your host, Erica, and today I have Melissa Murphy-Pavone with me. Now, Melissa is a certified financial planner and a certified divorce financial analyst, and she is the author of Divorce by Design. Today, she is going to help us avoid costly divorce mistakes. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Erica. I'm excited to be here.
You have a lot of acronyms, letters behind your name of different vacations, specialties you have taken on that make you a little bit different, a little bit more qualified to handle this topic of finance and divorce. So first, tell us a little bit about what you do.
I know it's like the alphabet soup behind everyone's name that I think is really annoying, but funny, right? And you kind of need it. And we paid a lot of money and studied hard for those tests. I always say, though, the hardest and, the best acronym is MOM, M-O-M. We don't get enough credit for that. There's not a test. It's like an ongoing, state of trying to be the best mom we can. But yes, there's a lot of letters after my name, but certified financial planner. I think a lot of people call themselves financial advisors. It's sort of a very vague term. The CFP board sort of just elevates that a little bit more. There is a rigorous test that you have to take and make sure that you have that fiduciary responsibility to do really holistic financial planning and not just investments, not just sales. So that's the CFP portion. The CDFA portion, which is Certified Divorce Financial Analyst, which is a mouthful. The specialty is finances and divorce, and financial planning, finances for a married couple is really different than somebody going through a divorce. There's a lot of different caveats that we have to take into consideration. So having that specialty really is making sure that we don't miss anything, making sure that we really know what we're agreeing to, what we're signing, and how that impacts you, because a lot of things change financially after a divorce.
Yeah. So what is the number one reason that somebody needs to hire someone like you? Like what they're sitting at their table and what is the problem that they're like facing or thinking about or spiraling over?
I mean, the number one question I get asked, right, is, am I going to be okay? Like we think about today, a 2-income household making ends meet. And then we think about, hey, how do we now do the same with the same pool of income, have 2 households, right? Like, how does that work? Instead of doom scrolling at 2 a.m. and listening to other people's tragedies, we sort of like put facts to those fears and we sort of answer those questions to say, hey, these are the unknowns. And really that's where that fear comes from, is like the unknowns. Let's start putting some numbers on paper and let's see what it could look like. I don't know what it's going to look like, but I can give you some best case, worst case, and knowing that you're going to fall somewhere in between. I want people to do this with eyes wide open, right? I don't want it to be, it's emotionally gut wrenching. It doesn't have to be financially gut wrenching.
Hopefully, but it is definitely the number one or number 2 fear. As the mom, either our fear is, oh my God, are my kids going to be okay?
Yeah.
Or the fear is, how am I ever going to be able to continue to afford to live the way that I was, or just even a way that's sustainable. We're not even
Yep.
asking for yachts and everything else. We're just asking to be able to live in an apartment that has 2 bedrooms instead of 1 so that we
Yeah.
all have space.
I mean, I think there's a lot of that fear of, right, hey, I don't want to be the bag lady, right? Like I don't want to
Yeah.
just like have all my bags and that's it, right? I also don't want to stay in a marriage that I don't want to be in just because of the money. And there's a lot that I do around that work too, which is very powerful to say like, hey, are you quietly thinking about divorce? Like what
Mhm.
could this look like? Doesn't mean we're calling a divorce attorney tomorrow. It doesn't mean, we're packing up his shit and telling him to leave, but maybe it means we start getting our ducks in a row. Maybe it means we start finding where the documents are. And from there, just, slowly but quietly thinking about what it could look like.
I am totally guilty of when the money worries hit to not look at the money. So if I'm worried about money, I'm going to look everywhere else and just try and ignore this elephant in the corner. And that's what actually gets you into bigger trouble. So it's
Yeah.
better to face the fear, to dive in and to get clear on it. So one of the topics that came up when we were talking, which I think is really important because hopefully you're in a situation where you and your soon to be ex have negotiated fair terms or what you think are fair terms, but you feel good about it. That's ideal. You're not sitting in court, you're not fighting over it, you're not having a third party decide who gets what. But in those instances, because the reality is that that happens too,
Hmm.
you need to understand that money on paper does not look the same as money in real life.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so when you balance out money coming in or money coming out, or how much debt have you acquired, it looks the same when you do the math equation, but it operates very differently. And I want to give you an example. There was a woman I had worked with a while back who, in the divorce settlement, one party got the house. It was a newer house. They hadn't paid off a lot of the debt around it, so there wasn't a lot of added value to it. And one person got the college loan. Now, so at the end of the day, they did the 2 columns, and everybody walked away with the same perceived value. Except one person walked away with a loan that had interest, that had late fees if it wasn't paid, that had time it took to pay it down, versus one that had an asset that the longer they sat on it, the more it became, the more it worked. Oh my gosh, what is the sentence?
Appreciated.
The more, is it Monday? It's not even Monday. So there was a huge gap. At the point that the paper was signed, everything was equal. But very quickly, 1 year, 2 year, 5 years out, things shifted and not in her favor.
Yeah. And I see that all the time. Sometimes people come to me just for that post divorce transition, right? Like, okay, now I got divorced. Now I have this lump sum of money. Help me manage it. Tell me what to do. I need you. I was not the CFO of the family. And I always cringe because I think that work is really powerful to do. And I know people need me, but I always have this gut wrenching feeling of like, woulda, shoulda, coulda. Like, could you have called me like 3 months ago? Like, I could have guided you a little bit better, and we could have had a different outcome. And oftentimes people come, right, with this piece of paper saying, all right, this is what I got, this is what he got. It's the same number, right? But those numbers are not the same. And I use this example often that $250,000 of equity in a house is not the same as $250,000 in a 401k. And it's not the same as $250,000 in a Roth IRA, and it's not the same as $250,000 in a high yield money market. So we can have 4 assets with the same snapshot value today of $250,000, and they are all not equal, right? Because the access points are different, the tax consequences are different, the appreciation is different. So it's really understanding what you own, what you owe. What I say there's 5 numbers. It's your assets, what you own, your liabilities, what you owe, your income is what you earn, your expenses is what you spend, and your credit score. And you need to start there, right? Let's start with those 5 numbers and then go from there. But oftentimes people think that it's fair, and sometimes it's not intentional, right? And other times it is. But you want to know what are the pros and cons and tax consequences of every asset you're either keeping or every asset that you're giving up. And that's really important. That's where I come in. I just kind of slow it down and say, all right, let's break it down, right? What does this mean on paper? And what does this mean in real life?
And that's where it's important to have multiple people on your team. We've talked a lot about the fact that your lawyer shouldn't be your therapist. Don't lean on your lawyer for the emotional support. That's a very expensive bill that you get in the mail if you're calling your lawyer every time he does something to piss you off. But it is the same, when it comes to houses and when it comes to finances. There are people who specialize in helping you understand what are the long-term implications of the choices that you have to make, because you're in a position of a heightened emotional state and you have to make logical business choices about your present and your future. What would you say are some of those questions that people need to make sure they ask or that they're looking at when it comes to money as they're negotiating their divorce?
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit on something really important is like you need to be grounded. Sometimes people come to me and they're like, "Okay, hey, here's all my numbers. Like, tell me what to do. Here's the spreadsheet, here's the statements." And I'm like, "All right, let's take a deep breath." Right? Like, who is your support system? Who is your mental health professional? Who is your coach? Like, we need to be grounded because the work that I do with you is not going to be meaningful unless you're in a place to receive it, right? You have to be ready to sort of do that. And we always talk about divorce as a roller coaster, right? There's no 2 days that look exactly the same. That it's highs and lows, and it's a roller coaster. So you have to sort of work through that emotional spot, and that coaching and the work that you do, Erica, is so important before they even come to me, before we get into the nitty gritty. And I think that that's the big disconnect is people, oftentimes they don't call me. Oftentimes they call the attorney first and they go straight to sort of legal strategy. And you know what? The lawyer asked, like, all right, where are the financials? Right. So it's like sort of like, let's do this in a more cost effective, more time efficient manner and build a team so that you can feel supported along the whole way.
And you'll probably absolutely die. But I made agreements like based on how it felt. So
Oh,
I had the opinion that I just wanted to be done. I just wanted to be able to move forward and it felt good enough. So my example was when it came to the house, we had owned it for 10 years. So I didn't really remember all of the pieces, but I knew I paid every monthly mortgage. I paid the taxes on it every year. And I was pretty darn sure that the down payment came from my grandparents passing away. So when my grandparents had passed away, I had just saved that money, right? Or money we had gotten
nice.
from the wedding. And my lawyer did advise me, and she's like, you really should go back. You really should unwind what percentage came from you and what came from him so that we can do it. And I just want it to be done. And we make those choices all the time that it feels good enough and I just want to be done. When it comes to child support, that feels good enough and I don't want to go back and I don't want to fight through the whole process again. And this is where having the right people around you can make it easier so you don't feel like you're doing it all alone.
Yeah. That is like the most expensive sentence you can say, like, I don't care. I just want to be done. It truly is because that is the critical point in every divorce where I call it the power of the pause. Like, let's just take a break. Because when you go and you concede, right, or when you make these agreements, you're trying to stop short term pain with long term commitments.
Yeah.
And like you don't want to make those long term financial decisions in those heightened emotional states. It's just not good business.
So if you are sitting in a heightened emotional state, as we all are, as we're going through the process, go check out the Wild Woman, go check out the club. That is the work. We concentrate so heavily on nervous system regulation. This is like my passion. I was just talking to my cousin actually, and she has a new baby and she's like, you need to work with new moms. I was like,
Oh, yeah.
talk about the opposite extreme, right? Divorced women and new moms, but what do we have in common? It's a huge transition. And we're just trying to figure it out while still caring for other little ones. And it needs a lot of regulating, a lot of support because it's not light work. You're doing big, heavy work while also having to navigate big business transactions in your life. Let's talk a little bit about the book because that's kind of the concept of the book, right? Divorce by Design. I pulled up a quote from our friends over at Fresh Starts, the divorce registry. But what they talked about is they said, what makes Divorce by Design stand apart is its philosophy. Melissa argues, convincingly and with evidence, that divorce doesn't have to be a war. By assembling the right team of financial experts, mediators, attorneys, and therapists from the start, readers can move through this process smarter, faster, and fairer. Often, she notes, in under a year. I loved that quote, and I think it sums it up because we get stuck in our head that having a huge team is more costly.
Yeah.
But often when we skip having the big team and we rely on one lawyer, it costs us more because we're working with the wrong expert to handle things that they're not designed to lead.
Yeah, it's not their zone of genius, right? Lawyers are really good at legal strategy, and they are the highest paid professional on the team, and rightfully so, right? They all went to law school. I get it. But I always say you don't want your attorney looking at your financial statements. One, they don't know what they're looking for. Two, I can do it twice as fast at half their rate. So it just is more efficient. And the same goes for me. Like, you don't want me doing the emotional support, right? That coaching work. One, it's not my zone of genius. Two, like, I am not prepared, right? Like, I don't have that work behind me to give you the proper advice that you need, and or the patience for that matter. That's not my zone of genius. So you can work with someone like you that has that skill set and that lights you up, and that's like your area,
Yeah.
and your rate will be less than mine. So we can like have 3 people on your team supporting you at all times, emotionally, financially, legally, but just working more efficiently. Um, and I think that that's what I just want. I want people to realize that we just don't have to call the attorney first. We're going to call them, right? They're not that they're not important, but let's leave them to the end, and let's get ourselves emotionally regulated. Let's get ourselves financially organized, and then we make that call together.
I love it. So who needs to be on their team?
Emotional support is number one. First and foremost, emotional support. People like you, Erica, that's doing that work, that's grounding them. It is gut wrenching, right? Like, this whole process. Nobody gets married to say, like, hey, I'm going to get divorced, right? This was not in anybody's plan, nobody's plan. Even the people that have great post prenups, that like, they still were not planning for this. And there's still that emotional grief that you're feeling. It's like a death of a marriage, and there's so many emotions that go with that, whether that's failing, whether that's like the guilt of, having a broken home for children. We all sort of come into this with our own stories on what marriage should look like. And it's definitely nobody planned for the divorce part. So definitely that emotional support piece. And sometimes people say, like, okay, I have a mental health professional therapist, and that's great. But sometimes you need that coach to work forward. I say I like having both, the mental health professional and the coach. So you have somebody sort of working backwards, like, how do we get here? And somebody holding your hand moving forward. And I think that oftentimes people think though they're the same, right? Or like we only need one of those people. But I definitely believe in 2 people, like, for that.
I like that description because I think that does come up a lot. Even when we look at what's your insurance going to pay for, they're going to probably pay for some of mental health visits with a therapist. They probably are not paying for a coach, but there's so much more than talk therapy, especially if you have been living in a state of survival for so long. Like, yeah, we can talk about it all you want, but we cannot solve an emotional problem with a logical approach. We have got to get into your body. We got to rage it out. We got to cry it out. We got to move it through, which is a lot more than what a therapist does. A therapist is really to reflect to you, to ask you key questions so you can learn about what brought you here. And then you put yourself in the room of women rising, or find that coach and break through where you're still being triggered and held back.
Yeah. And I think the coach is often, important, right? Just to navigate this. Oftentimes this is someone's first divorce. So it's like, hey, is this normal? Should I wait this long for it to get a return back? Like, what's the timeline? Am I supposed to, like, oh my God, I just watched a movie and cried my eyes out. Like, what am I doing? I want him back. Right. Like, that sort of up and down is not your, I have to wait till Tuesday to talk to my therapist, but like, hey, let me text Erica, right? Like, I have somebody sort of on speed dial to help navigate it in real time.
Yeah, nothing worse. God, I used to hate it. I'd like be in a moment, I'd book an appointment with my therapist, and by the time the appointment showed up, I'd already figured out my own solution, but the waiting is the worst. All
Yeah.
right. So we've got emotional support. Who else do we have on our team?
Then we have financial support, and this could be me as a CDFA or somebody else. I work with a ton of great CDFAs across the country. The nice thing about CDFAs is they don't have to be specific to your state.
Perfect.
So we're not bound by state lines. We can work nationwide, often on Zoom. But I have a lot of great CDFAs that I work for. But that is important because they have the nuances, right? It's not just a financial advisor. A couple of things there. People are like, oh, I have a financial advisor. I don't need you. Great. Is it like your financial advisor or like the household financial advisor? And like, is it your soon to be ex's college roommate, right? Or an uncle, right? That there's some sort of like ties to, because that feels icky to me. So you want somebody, and oftentimes financial advisors, right? They get scared. They're like, oh, she has more letters after her name. She's going to steal my client, right? No, I'm here to be that like third party to come in and sort of like to give you an honest opinion without knowing the backstory, right? Without knowing the history.
Yeah.
I think that's important. And one of the other things I'll just say is that CDFAs can work in two capacities. We can be neutral. So, like, say, husband and wife are like, hey, let's do this outside the courtroom amicably. We have a mediator. We don't really quite understand the finances, or, there's some, is this mine? Is this marital type of situation? I can work in a neutral capacity. So both spouses hire me. I work for the family. I become like the family problem solver. What are the pros? What are the cons? What are the tax consequences? I often try to frame it through the lens of the children. If there's children involved, like, we want both parents to be happy and healthy. We don't want like there to be a huge disparity in lifestyle from one household to another. And that's how I work as a neutral. But I can also work as an advocate, right? And that's for either party sometime. And people always say, like, do you only work with women? And it's pretty 50-50, like female versus male. Divorce doesn't discriminate, right? So I have young clients, I have old clients, I have very wealthy clients, and I have clients that are just making it by, right? Because everybody needs this advice. And as an advocate, I'm in your corner. So I become your eyes and your ears. So if you have a spouse who sort of is the CFO of the family, right? Who's made the financial decisions, and you've maybe put your career on the back burner, right? Maybe took some time off away from work to raise the children, maybe doing some part-time things, but sort of your focus has not been on the finances. And you get this piece of paper, like slid over on the table, and it looks fair, right? It looks like, oh, okay. But you don't know, right? And you're like, I don't necessarily trust this guy because I don't, yeah.
Right? Why would they be extra giving right now? Like, everybody is going to be advocating in their best interest. It is rare that somebody is giving away money on the table.
Right. So, so that is a perfect example of when you might need an advocate to say, hey, Melissa, I don't want to go to court. I don't want to put the boxing gloves on, but can you just look at this? Because I don't know if like he's being extra nice, and maybe he's being extra nice because he's hiding something, right? Or there's guilt, or am I just missing something completely, right? Or is he wanting me to look here so I don't look over here, right? And sometimes that happens too, where we sort of distract the other party with the offer. So that's when I come in and I really look to be your eyes and your ears to make sure, again, that you're not agreeing to something that you don't fully understand, and that you understand what's on the table and what's not on the table.
I love that. I think that that's really important. And then I'm assuming your next person, probably mediation. So you've got a clear financial plan. So now we need to go discuss and figure
Yeah.
out where it lands and kind of go back and forth and divvy up each of the assets
Yeah.
one at a time, kind of sort of moving through the list.
Yeah, absolutely. Mediation is a great alternative. And sometimes people need a little bit more help with that mediation, right? Sometimes they just go straight to the mediator and they think they got it under control. But now we have like a house, right? But we don't have enough cash and we might not qualify for the refinance. So, like, how do we buy out a party, right? And should we buy out the party? Because are we going to be house poor? And are we going to be able to afford this house, like, moving forward, right? So sometimes I come in just for like a piece of the puzzle. Like in mediation, we're like 90% there, but we're like, someone wants to stay at the house, we can't refinance. How do we buy the other person out? We have retirement money, but retirement money is not the same as house money, right? So how do we tax impact that? I can come in, or a CDFA can come in and sort of just like help you over that hump. And I think that's really important, because sometimes when you're at that point and you're ready to say, I don't care, or just sign something that you don't understand, right? The whole thing could fall apart. One person gets in somebody's ear, somebody's aunt says, no, you need to talk to so-and-so, right? And then now we have boxing gloves on, and now we're starting fresh from attorneys. And I always say you end up paying your attorney's kids' college instead of your own kids' college. So like, and then we have to start all over. So I'm happy to come in to do just a small piece of the puzzle if it helps get a couple over that hump when they're really close, because it's so much better to do it at a table with the two of you with a neutral party than it is to be in a courtroom with two attorneys battling it out and a judge in a black robe that has never met you or your children making decisions for your future.
Yeah, so much has definitely changed in the landscape of what divorce used to look like to where it's at now. And I love the fact that there are so many people who are dedicated to helping it shift, because the war, the back and forth, the tens of thousands of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars from some of the lawyers that I've talked to that people waste on moving into their next chapter it's just not effective. Nobody needs to start that much in the hole, or that broken, for lack of better words, just raked through the coals.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about tools that people can use. So we talked about your book. Okay. So if you guys are sitting on the other side and you're like, education, knowledge is power, and maybe I need to just do a little bit of research first to figure out what I need. An easy step into it would be to download a copy, go buy a copy of your book, get the book, read it through, understand what kind of a divorce you're trying to design and the people that you might want to consider to have on your team. And that link is in the show notes. It's on the crazyexwivesclub.com or on Melissa's website, which is linked down below. What are there other options? Because I know you have a couple other kind of tiptoeing steps forward to support people in this journey.
Yeah, I do what's called a financial clarity package, and it's for those who are sort of quietly thinking of divorce. So if you're sitting in an unhappy, right, potentially unhealthy relationship, and you say, I might want to do that, but I'm scared, right? I'm not ready to call an attorney. It's not that bad yet, but like, I'm not necessarily happy. But, everyone always says, like, what's the right age? How old do the kids have to be? I'm waiting for X, I'm waiting for Y, to sort of happen. But I think a lot of the sort of the fear, again, right, comes from that unknown. So if we replace the fear of the unknown with facts, then we can sort of go in eyes wide open. So what that looks like is a 3-hour limited scope container where we do a deep dive, right? And the work that we do together is useful no matter what. I say this like, hey, if you decide to get divorced, you're going to need the work that we do and the deliverables that I give you when you go to your attorney or your mediator, right? Like, so we're doing it, we're preemptively getting things. I'm going to help you find where the documents are. I'm going to help you get them organized. I'm going to help you explain to you what they actually mean. And I think there's a stigma if you are not the CFO of the family to be like, I don't know where my mortgage is. I don't know like who our accountant is. Like, I don't know what's in his 401k. And that's okay. Don't stay frozen there because you don't know. I say like, it's sort of like that little like on your shoulder, like, you have that guilt and that like mean voice telling you like, oh my God, how did you get here? Why do you not know this? Like, how'd you let you get to this spot? And I say we're just going to like brush it off our shoulders, right? Because that's not necessary and it's not helpful right now. Back in the day, you could quarter to them be like, hey, let's go to the mailbox and get the mail and get your mortgage statement quickly, right? But today, everything's electronic. There's two-factor authentication. I can barely get into my own email account, let alone try to break into my husband's, with like the codes and, all the things with the two-factor authentication. So it's not as easy as it used to be to find out these things. But that doesn't mean we can't find them, right? There are places that we can look together, and I'll help hold your hand through this process to say, hey, let's find out who your accountant is. If you filed married filing joint, we can get a copy of that. If it's not in sort of the filing cabinet in the basement, then we can go on the IRS website and get a transcript. Your spouse is not going to know. This is information that you have. If you are on a joint account, but you might not have a card or you might not have a login, you have the ability to have that login. You might just not have access now, but that doesn't mean you don't have the right to access. So I will hold your hand through this process to try to figure out and work backwards. A lot of women come to me and they're like, I don't know all of the answers to these questions. I can't work with you. False. That's false. We can work together and we can help find it out. And we don't have to know 100% because we're sort of just like dipping our toe in the water and getting organized. I know I went on a whole tangent there.
I
But
love
so
that. Well, what I wanted to say too is to make sure it's really clear. That doesn't have to be a meeting with both of you. If you're in
no.
a position where both of you are considering if divorce is the right option, great. 2 people can attend. But we're also talking about if you're considering it and you want to understand where you're at, and it is really helpful if you haven't been the CFO of your family. Maybe you know some details, but not all of it. This can be that guidance that you need to get a clear picture. And then as you were sharing, if you decide to continue to move forward, great, you're going to need all these findings. If you decide not to, if you decide and instead say, things are getting better, or we've started working on it, or we've turned a corner for whatever reason, okay, well then you have a clear financial picture.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that you're agreeing to say, yes, divorce is the next step. You are just trying to understand what does the reality of the world you built together look like when it comes to money.
Yeah, absolutely. And we do, an hour deep dive. So we upload all the documents to a secure portal. We go over them. I often stress that education piece to make sure people know, right, what they actually own and what these things mean. So I provide a safe space for us to look at those documents and say, what does this actually mean, right? Sometimes we live in a house, but we don't own it, right? Sometimes we own the house, but we're not on the mortgage, right? So the devil's in the details, and I will point all those things out and create an opportunity for you to ask questions, right? You might not have had these questions, and there might be ways of like why you guys set things up. And I'm not here to judge. This is a judgment-free zone, right? But we're gonna know who's on the title and who's not. What happens if somebody were to pass away? How this transfers? Is this a marital asset or is this a separate property and a non-marital asset? So I go through all of that with you. And like you said, if by chance, and I'm not pro-divorce, you decide to stay together, you just had a great in-depth financial understanding and you'll feel empowered to bring a little bit more to the table next time you have a financial conversation with your spouse. So the work that we do together is not lost. I think it's an investment in yourself and just in your financial future. So you sort of have a better understanding of what that balance sheet looks like. We then analyze all of this, and the deliverables become an asset map, which is a great tool to sort of see all of the assets and liabilities on one page. Instead of just like a spreadsheet, it's a graphic, so it's a little easier to understand and comprehend. And then we sort of do some what if scenarios, like what does it look like if I buy the house? What does it look like if we sell the house and split the proceeds? And those exercises just help provide those guardrails of going into negotiations with real numbers and not just that fear. Sometimes people say, their spouses might be like, you're never going to survive without me. We hear these narratives. You're going to be poor without me. You need me. Like you're going to starve. And I'm there to prove otherwise. I'm there to actually say, this is what it could like. This is the best case. This is the worst case. You're going to fall somewhere in between here, but at least you know what that range is. So you don't have to listen to a false narrative.
Yeah. And then I think you also have a self-guided like workbook, a download, don't you?
I do. Yeah. If that's something like you're sort of like, hey, I'm not ready quite yet to like work with a professional, we have a downloadable prep book, and that sort of says like, okay, where are all the documents? What do I have to start finding before I get there? And, we can sort of start saying or start trying to find where these documents are, have these conversations, not necessarily related to divorce, just to get some more information for you and sort of put that away. But then to see who the players are, right, for your divorce team and who you want to have on your team and what that looks like. And it just really helps you get a little organized if you're not quite ready yet.
and definitely taking it slow, one step at a time, not making any emotional decisions is going to benefit you in the long run. It is the number one
Absolutely.
thing that you need to do. So regulating those emotions, put yourself in the room with the right people to support you, and then build your divorce team. People that you'll use the whole journey, people that you'll use just for certain topics, but that way you have a clear view of what it really looks like instead of making these decisions on something that has to last for a long time. Like the house is such a big one. Do I keep it? You know, how much change can we handle all in one moment? I don't want to lose the house that my children were raised in, but it is a huge financial decision, not just
Yeah.
what's the mortgage and how much would I need to pay.
Yeah. The house is such a tricky one. People often say, like, please tell me I can keep the house. And I'm like, well, please show me some statements before I can tell you anything. There's no guarantees. And I say, I'm from New York. So I'm like, I'm going to be straight with you. Like, if you can't afford this house, I'm going to tell you you can't afford this house. Because if I say, okay, we'll do whatever it takes to keep this house, I'm doing you a disservice. You are literally hiring me for those letters after my name to make sure that you are getting the guidance that you need. And sometimes I don't have the best news, right? I don't have the best outcome, but it's going to be the honest outcome. And it's going to be for future you. I always say, when you are in divorce, you are trying to get through the day, right? You are in survival mode. You are literally just being like, how can I get to bedtime, right? Like, I just have to get a couple more hours to get
And
to
not
bedtime.
cry.
And not
And
cry, right? Or not cry
lay
in
on the
front of my
floor.
kids, right? Like Wade's like and cry in the shower. But I have the ability to like walk along the path with you and be your eyes and your ears and look for future you. Like, Erica, how are these decisions going to impact you 10 years from now? You can't see 10 years. You can barely see 10 minutes. But I have the ability to zoom out, right? Because I'm not emotionally attached. I'm not on this roller coaster with you per se, and I'm grounded. So that's where like your work comes into, like making sure you're grounded so that we together, right, can look for future you and like, is this going to benefit you? Are you going to regret this? Like, I don't want you to have divorce remorse and be like, shit, I shoulda, woulda, coulda, right? Like, why didn't I just wait? Why did I just sign? Because I was being hasty and I was over it to get to this point.
Yeah. Absolutely. I got a few of those in my closet that I'm like, oh, if I had just a little. And again, nothing major, but just a little over time adds up really quickly. So I'm not sitting here to advocate that you got to like take them for all their money. Not what I'm saying, but I'm saying that we make choices or people pleaser us chooses to do things to make it easier on the other person. That's what I was guilty of. We rounded down on a lot of things because I was like, oh, that extra $25 a month doesn't matter. Okay, $25 a month, 10 years later, probably kind of sort of mattered.
Compound interest, girl, right?
Whoops. But again, money is a renewable resource. When it doesn't come from one place, we figure it out and we figure out how to make it work from somewhere else. So this gives you the clarity for you to know what you need to do next. I want to thank you, Melissa, for joining us today. You guys, all of Melissa's links, whether you want to check out the book, hire her for a little pre-prep divorce financial analysis, or get that how-to guide to figure out what documents you need. All those details are down below in the show notes. You can also find them on Melissa's website as well as thecrazyexwivesclub.com. Thank you again, Melissa. And for those of you listening, may you be financially empowered until we chat with you next week.
And that's it. Another great episode of the Crazy Ex-Wives Club, a podcast for women learning how to heal from their divorce. Tune in next week for more advice and tips to help you figure out life after divorce. And until then, give yourself grace, do the best you can, and know that this is all part of the process.